Hi guys, so I think we're getting closer and closer to the point where Boris Johnson will not get a deal. I've been saying for the last number of months that I believe it was in my gut feeling was that he would get a deal because he needed a deal. It was necessary for him politically, for his career, to get a deal. But unfortunately, I think he's going down the same road as Theresa May in that he wants just to pacify certain elements within his party. He's not looking at the long term, he's looking at the short term. How can I keep the ARG happy and not look at the long-term picture here? And I think what's going to happen is he's going to crash out without a deal at this stage. But there are some perhaps glimmers of hope still. So what am I talking about? So on the 27 heads of state need to be updated by Michel Barnier. Now this was expected to take place by video conference on Thursday, but that actual date seems to be slipping at the moment, and it's likely that it could take place next week. Now what does that mean? Why are they changing the date? Well, the likelihood is that Boris Johnson and Michel Barnier, via David Frost, the UK's chief negotiator, maybe have something else to talk about. You know, there's a possibility of a deal. They're extending it out to the latest possible. You know, there are two ways to look at this. If Michel Barnier said we're going to have our progress report on Thursday anyway, then it would be likely that there isn't going to be a deal, or a deal has already been agreed, but this doesn't look likely. If he's extended it, if he's postponed his video conference with the EU27, then it's more likely that there's still a possibility of a deal. Now, something else that's interesting is that the the European Parliament, I should say, are expected to have their vote on any deal because it has to be ratified. I've talked about this before. The vote has to be ratified, and the European Parliament is expected to ratify any deal on the 16th of December. But some people within the European Parliament have said that it's possible that it could be extended, so not having the vote on the 16th, but having it on the 28th of December, just a few days before the end of the transition period. That would give some extra time for any particular deal to be scrutinized. So there is a possibility that the dates that have been set are going to be extended. Michel Barnier is not going to give his report this week, but maybe next week. And the EU are not going to vote on the actual ratification on the 16th of December, but on the 28th. So this gives a little bit of hope of actually achieving a deal between the UK and the EU. But I still feel Boris Johnson is not playing ball here, and I fear that he thinks that he can run down the clock and get a deal. But I think we're going into territory where he will crash out without a deal. He's playing a game and he doesn't understand that it's not a game, it's something serious. And I fear that the UK now is not going to get a deal. Of course, they won't get a deal before the end of the transition period. And I've said this before, when the transition period ends, the UK will be back in Brussels in January to work out individual agreements. I said before that Brexiteers seem to think that at the end of the transition period, the relationship between the EU and the UK ends. No, that's not the case. It's better to have a trade deal. It's better for both sides to have this trade deal. But going forward, the UK will have to negotiate with the EU. They're probably going to negotiate for years to come because there are so many things to negotiate. It's going to be much more expensive, it's going to be much more complicated, and it's going to take much more time. But if I was to be asked, do I think Boris Johnson is going to get a deal? I've moved from saying yes to probably not. I still have a glimmer of hope that he will get a deal, but I think we're at the stage now that he's not going to get a deal unless something drastically changes. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.